The more I watch, the more I love Fairy Gone. This week's episode was probably my favorite out of the four. I really like the new character introductions that we get introduced to, I like the action, I like the character moments, and this was the first episode that didn't just kick off an episode with exposition, but rather after the opening they give us a bit of a taste of Veronica and Marlia's backstory, which was a very nice way to kick off this episode. I really enjoyed just seeing where Marlia as well as Veronica went in this episode. I really liked just the small snippet of pretty much what we've already seen in the past, but a little bit more fleshed out in terms of what happened when their village was being burned down, and how she kind of put her full trust in Veronica in coming back, as we learned that she was always there for her, someone who would always protect her. When everyone looked at her as the little disaster, Veronica was the one who would pull her away and treat her as someone who is just a normal girl who she wanted to be friends with, which for Marlia was pretty much everything, because clearly she didn't have a lot of friends, and someone who was insanely popular in her village wanting to be associated with her, that really meant the entire world for her, especially because she never had biological family pretty much. She pretty much was just being raised by those who wanted to raise her. And I really like that, because this episode really starts off by Veronica pretty much telling a younger version of our main character to trust her, that she will keep her safe, she'll lead the soldiers away from her, and she will come back. And the episode ends with that same girl coming to the rescue, and you hear the same words being spoken, just to trust her and that she would protect her. I really like that. It was such a really good dynamic, because we can see just why she keeps chasing after Veronica. To her, this is her closest family that is still alive, even if they aren't biologically related. And even if they are kind of separated by these different factions as of right now, it seems like they still both truly love and care for the other, and no matter what, they will be there to protect them, even if it means going against their organization, if it comes to that. And I like that a whole lot. I think this episode really had the most character and overall personality out of the four episodes. You see a lot of great moments between Free and Marlia. I really like their overall banter and interactions. You're definitely noticing almost a growing partnership there. They really feel like not just like colleagues at this point, they actually seem to put some trust in each other. You're seeing that Free, when she's passed out, he's waiting by her bedside to make sure that she's okay. Something I absolutely love with the fairies is how when they use them too much, we're seeing a newbie who is using a very powerful weapon, and if she uses it too much, she can actually pass out for a day. And it's not like after she recovers, she can just immediately use her weapon. No, it takes a lot of time, a lot of food, a lot of rest, a lot of just waiting around before she has the energy to use this amazing power. I really like that. It makes it so there actually is consequences for messing up with your fairies, getting them damaged too much, because that damage will reflect back onto the user. I like stuff such as that because it really makes it feel like they're not just these powerful super soldiers who can get everything done with no consequence. Their fairy could get its head cut off and then they can just resummon it. No, like, it takes time to be able to have enough energy to summon it out again. And if they get too much damage, it's also going to cause a lot of damage to the user itself. I like situations like that, as we get to see scenes where basically Marlia is useless. Like, even in a chase sequence, we've seen her chase other people in this series, and she does a remarkable job at keeping up. In this episode, however, she's pretty much exhausted because she just used an insane weapon, as she kind of got her ass handed to her, because even though she was able to push back the enemy, she used so much force that essentially she knocked herself out of the game for over a day. I like situations like that because it really makes you feel like even though they are super soldiers and they have these powers, you still feel like a newbie such as her, or even a veteran such as Free, they still have to be careful about how much energy they use, because if situations come like the Mafia is trying to kill you, you may not have the power to actually properly defend yourself. And if it wasn't for Veronica coming in at the end of the episode, who knows what would happen, because this assassin is creepy. There was one moment where he was like a snake sliding across her gun to just throw knives and stab her. This man is insane, and the two Mafia members that we get introduced to, one of which I thought was, oh, she's kind of badass, she's kind of playful, and almost a little bit of a troll, and then the other guy is just a snake, literally, who creeps me out, but also is kind of a badass with how good he is with blades. I really like this episode because the action in the first chunk of it, where we're still seeing a lot of the fairy battles, I really like seeing just the overall kind of fog that was kind of being applied to the screen. It was hard to piece together what exactly was happening, so alongside the characters, you're thinking, I don't really know what's happening. You can tell where the fairies are, but they're so clouded, and just this mist is making it so disorienting, and I loved that. I loved how the fairies looked in the fog, I loved how hard it was to follow, and just seeing the overall pain going to both Free as well as Marlia, as you're pretty much seeing someone who looks to be going to steal the Black Fairy Tome and get away with no repercussions, and then in comes Marlia, who has the ability to essentially burn the fairies but she used so much power that it kind of knocked herself out at the end. I like just the way the fairy battles function because there is so many things at play. You can attack the fairy to do enough damage to attack the user, but if you just focus on that, then maybe the user will come in and shoot you in the head. There's all these little things you gotta think about in the middle of a battle because it really is, it can be a 2v2 or maybe a 3v2. It's hard to exactly say how the battles will go because there's all these little pieces at play, and I love it, and I love seeing that it's not just like after they're done, after Marlia uses a really cool power from her fairy to burn the other antagonist fairy, that she can just get out of this unharmed. No, she used so much of that burning power that she knocks herself out. And that actually plays a major factor in the final battle of this episode, where essentially she has to run for her life and just try to shoot, but clearly she needed her fairy in that situation. I really like that. You're seeing a lot of just hints and just overall setup for future events that have yet to come. You're seeing Kane and the other basically saying like, of course, we've never met Veronica, but we know that is absolutely a lie. But I love how straight and narrow they are when they're talking to her, being like, never heard of her. Did you hear of her? I love that because she's not stupid. She recognizes that they know more than they're letting on, but also there's no reason for them to admit that to her, at least at this point in time, because will they be on her side or will they be an enemy for her? We don't know as of yet. I think depending on how this Veronica situation plays out, that will definitely lead into the next couple of episodes if they will be allies, if not antagonists, and I quite like that. Because you're learning all these like simple things about how these two guys were essentially offered to join up with the government to essentially pursue their passion, but they didn't want to be held down by chains, so they almost are outcast and at times maybe walking a thin line between legal and illegal, and I like that. You're getting all these little clues about how the kind of current unified country works, while also seeing why so many different people, not even just those who are fairy soldiers, are kind of pushing back against the current way of life, because it seems like this unified government isn't really as unified as it is. Maybe it's a little more kind of ball and chain than a lot of these people like, and it's not just the fairy soldiers, it's even just people who are interested in studying fairies themselves, which I really appreciate. There's a lot of small details with the overall world history and just overall world mechanics, while also setting up a lot of events for just the characters themselves. I definitely think Marlia as well as Sri were the star in this episode in terms of seeing a lot of personality and banter between them, but then you also get enough with Veronica, so when she does come charging in through that window in a very majestic and badass way, you really feel like you understand why she did come to save the day. We can see, ever since they were kids, she really was there to protect her, and even if it would go against orders, I think she definitely still would protect her no matter what. Even if she does play hard to get and will maybe shun her away, things like that, you can tell their connection is more than just a couple of childhood friends. There's definitely a family connection there, and I love the growing relationship between Free and Marlia. Really, the characters overall, if anyone's been feeling like they're not characters enough, they're a little too one-note, I think at this point you're really starting to see the personalities flourish and shine and really radiate off each other and just bounce off the others, so you feel like there actually is a growing relationship here between friends, colleagues, family, all that kind of fun stuff, and that's why I love Fairy Gone. The action is awesome with the fairies and just the overall human combat. The music is amazing. When it needs to be badass and get you hyped up like at the beginning of the episode, it does a remarkable job, but at the end of the episode, when it feels like characters are creeping through a crypt, it actually makes your anxiety just rise up because it feels disturbing. You're clenching up like the characters, not knowing what's going to pounce out at you, and that's what I love about the soundtrack. It fits every scene so perfectly. If it just needs some simple drums to just set the right tone with a couple of government officials talking to the other. If it needs to be disturbing with characters walking through a crypt, it can do it, and if it needs to be badass and get you hyped up, it can absolutely nail that. The more we learn about this world, the more we learn about the unified war and just where this unified country went, the more you can see pretty clear that the deeper we go into the politics in terms of the hierarchy and just who's truly leading this country, the more we're gonna realize that there's probably a lot of corruption in this government. I'm really excited to see just overall where they want to go with the overall political atmosphere, because so far with what we've seen, it's really interesting, it's complex, you're starting to understand why certain characters are pushing against it, but I think the deeper we go, and if we can notice maybe previous leaders or something like that, knowing that this is a two-core, I think they have so many possibilities to really flesh out this world and its characters overall, the political history and the current political climate, that this is going to be such a complex story on just so many levels, from a personal character level to just an overall world level, and that's what makes me excited. I love the current cast of characters and where they're going, but the more I learn about what's happened with this unified war, the more I'm eager to learn why so many characters are pushing back and why so many refuse to work with the government, when it seems like that would be the logical conclusion. Pursue your passion, get all the benefits, but clearly a lot of ball and chain action going around. There's a lot of, I feel like, corruption And even when you see characters like the Mafia, maybe they have a reason for joining a Mafia rather than the unified government, things just keep getting more complex, and I absolutely adore it. I really think Faragon is one of the strongest series of this season. It's such a bold claim because people really aren't a big fan of this show, and there is so many strong series, but I'm just so invested. Characters, world, the production, I love how it looks, I love how it sounds. I'm just so in love with Faragon. This is such a great show. This series is just made for me, and the more I watch, the more I love it, and I really hope more people will start seeing the beauty in this show, especially knowing that it is going to get a simul dub from Funimation. I hope more people give this one a shot because I am loving it the more I watch it, and I'm dying to see more. See where this is going to go. That cliffhanger has me eager to see episode 5, but for everyone who did watch this week's episode of Faragon, did you love it as much as myself, or did you find it a little lackluster? Let me know down in the comment section below. If you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and also hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.